Hello, everyone. Today, I'm going to share with you a story that happened to me personally. It's a tale that still sends shivers down my spine whenever I think about it. This is my experience with a haunted apartment. I had just moved into a new apartment, eager to start fresh in a new city. The building was old, but had a certain charm that drew me in. The landlord, an elderly man with kind eyes, handed me the keys and warned me about the creaky floors and the occasional draft. I thought nothing of it at the time, excited to make the place my own. The first few days were uneventful as I settled into my new routine. I arranged my furniture, hung up my favorite paintings, and got accustomed to the neighborhood. It wasn't until the third night that I noticed something odd. As I lay in bed, drifting off to sleep, I heard a faint whispering sound coming from the walls. At first, I dismissed it as the building settling or perhaps the wind outside. But as the nights passed, the whispering grew louder and more persistent. One evening, determined to find the source of the noise, I pressed my ear against the wall. The whispers were clearer now, almost as if they were speaking directly to me. I couldn't make out the words, but the tone was desperate and mournful. A chill ran down my spine, and I quickly pulled away. Days turned into weeks, and the whispers became a part of my nightly routine. I started to feel a constant sense of unease, as if I were being watched. One night, as I was preparing for bed, I noticed a cold spot in the hallway near the bedroom. No matter how high I turned up the heat, that particular spot remained icy cold. My curiosity piqued. I decided to investigate further. Armed with a flashlight, I inspected the walls closely. To my surprise, I found small, almost imperceptible cracks running along the baseboards. Kneeling down, I peered through one of the cracks and felt a cold draft hit my face. It was then that I heard it again, the whispering, but this time it was accompanied by a faint sobbing sound. My heart raced as I stood up, realizing that something was terribly wrong with this apartment. The next day, I visited the landlord and asked him if he knew anything about the previous tenants. His face turned pale, and he hesitated before speaking. "That apartment has a dark history," he said quietly. "Years ago, a family lived there. The husband was a troubled man, and one night, in a fit of rage, he killed his wife and children before taking his own life. Since then, no one has stayed in that apartment for long. They all claim to hear voices, whispers, and crying. I didn't want to scare you, so I didn't mention it before." Fear gripped me as I realized that the whispers I had been hearing were the voices of the murdered family. Their spirits were trapped within the walls, unable to find peace. Determined to help them, I began researching ways to cleanse the apartment of its dark energy. I reached out to a local priest who specialized in exorcisms. He agreed to come over and perform a cleansing ritual. The night he arrived, the atmosphere in the apartment felt heavier than ever. The whispers were louder, more frantic, as if they sensed what was about to happen. The priest walked through each room, reciting prayers and sprinkling holy water. As he entered the hallway, the cold spot seemed to grow colder. He stopped and placed his hand on the wall, closing his eyes as he muttered a final prayer. Suddenly, the whispers grew to a deafening roar, and the entire apartment seemed to shake. Then, just as quickly as it had started, the noise ceased. An eerie silence filled the air. The priest turned to me, beads of sweat on his forehead. "It's done," he said. "They can rest now." That night was the first in weeks that I slept peacefully. The apartment felt different, lighter somehow. The cold spot was gone, and the whispers had ceased. I knew the spirits had found peace at last. I continued living in that apartment, and over time, the memories of the haunting faded. But I will never forget the voices that once filled the walls. The desperate cries for help from a family trapped in their own personal hell. Their story, and my experience, serve as a haunting reminder of the unseen forces that can linger in places marked by tragedy. Months passed, and life returned to a semblance of normalcy. I threw myself into work and social activities, trying to forget the eerie experiences that had once plagued my nights. The apartment, now free of its haunting presence, felt like a safe haven once again. However, one evening, as I was tidying up, I discovered something that sent a chill down my spine. Behind an old bookshelf that I rarely moved, I found a hidden door. It was small, almost like a crawl space, and covered in dust and cobwebs. My heart raced as I stared at it, the memories of the whispers and the cold spot flooding back. Gathering my courage, I opened the door. The air inside was musty and thick with the smell of decay. Using a flashlight, I peered inside and saw a narrow passageway leading to a small, hidden room. The walls were covered in old, faded wallpaper, and in the center of the room was a single, broken chair. As I stepped inside, a sense of dread washed over me. It was as if the very air was heavy with sorrow and pain. I noticed a stack of old, yellowed papers on the floor next to the chair. Picking them up, I began to read. They were letters, written by the wife to her husband. The letters spoke of fear and desperation, of her pleas for him to seek help and to stop his violent outbursts. One letter, dated the night of the murders, was particularly chilling. It was unfinished, the ink smudged as if she had been interrupted while writing. It read, "Please, if you find this, know that I tried to save us. He is not himself anymore. The darkness has taken over, and I fear for our lives." A sudden draft made me shiver, and I turned to see a faint, ghostly figure standing in the doorway. It was the wife, her eyes filled with tears. She stared at me for a moment, then nodded slowly before fading away. I realized she had led me here to find these letters, to understand her story. I knew what I had to do. The next day, I took the letters to the local historical society. They were able to corroborate the tragic events and agreed to add the letters to their archives as a testament to the family's suffering. It felt like the right thing to do, to honor their memory and ensure their story was not forgotten. After that, the apartment felt truly at peace. I never heard the whispers again, and the cold spots never returned. I continued to live there, always mindful of the history that had unfolded within its walls. It was a reminder that even in the darkest of places, there is a story that needs to be told, a truth that needs to be uncovered. Living in that apartment taught me that some places are marked by the past, but with understanding and compassion, we can help those spirits find peace, and in doing so, we find a little peace ourselves.